Welcome to the Creative Playing Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion to Ragnarok story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
Hey guys, Jim and Kelly here from Creative Playing Podcast Network, coming here to shine a little light on your day.
Howdy!
It is hashtag RPGaDay2020. It is the 7th year, by the way, of RPGaDay, if nobody's keeping track.
Very, very
And
cool.
today, the word of the day is light.
Let there be light. Of course, when I saw the word light, again, I kind of go literal, but I think of my character, Sister Solace. Solace. No, I said Solace. Oh my God. Sister Solace, is a tiefling, who looks as much like a devil as you can possibly get. But she is a cleric of the god Pelor, who is the god, he's the light father, the god of light, and healing, and, so I put a lot of, I even created a whole sheet about, that would have different, curses or blessings involving light and darkness, for her because of her background. She would have different, sayings and stuff. So she was very focused on the light. Even though, because she looked as much like a devil as possible, and I intentionally did that. Because I'm like, fine, if I have to play the cleric, I'm going to make it look like the opposite of what a cleric would look like. So red skin, black hair, black horns, gold eyes. Because of course she's the gold eyes would match the gold of Pelor's symbol of the sun. I have to match. But so I think of her because she is, she's obsessed with the light and bringing the light to others, and light to the darkness. So when I saw light, that's who I thought of.
Illumination of the Lord of Light.
Yes. Sister Solace. She's a disciple of the god Pelor.
The Lord of Light.
Yes. She has a gold mace that she will cast the light spell on, so it looks like a small sun. And she will smite the darkness. Bring light when there is shade. And she speaks with a Slavic accent.
So for mine, I was actually going to go with tricks to light in the dungeon, which we've kind of mentioned, I'm pretty sure, a dozen times over.
Vision, we kind of already stepped into the light.
We illuminated that, yes.
We illuminated that
dispelled
topic.
The shade. So it's one of those of, as and it's not just in D&D, it's in pretty much any RPG. You can use the light or lack of light in a setting to help set things up. I mean, sort of like what you said yesterday in the desert, you could use blinding light, to play with your players' heads, because it's the blinding light. You can't see the bad guy. It's like that fighter plane that comes at you from the sun. You can't see your target. That could even be used for sci-fi. Enemy craft approaching you with the sun to its back, So tricks of the light are something that you can really use for and against your players, to just, make the players think of different ways to do things. I mean, how many Star Wars groups have we had where a Jedi whips out his lightsaber to use it as a torch? I mean,
True.
that's one that, that we actually have seen in a few of the video games and, animated series is that they pop that lightsaber on to use it as light. Even in the last Star Wars. Didn't they use that when they were in the sand tunnels?
And you know what? I also use it in World of Warcraft. I mean, everything's pretty light, but a lot of times there's really dark areas, and I tend to have weapons. I actually use torches for a lot of my monks and stuff as their weapons, and it's really cool because when you go into a dark part of the cave or something, boom, there it is. You can see, and I don't know if you remember old Ragefire
Mm-hmm.
Chasm. When the other boss was up that side passage that was like, but you couldn't see it because it was so dark.
See that damn doorway.
Yeah, and I would always whip out like a wand or do a spell that illuminated so people could see it. So I have a tendency to use transmog. I love transmog. Transmog my weapons to look like torches.
Oh, I mean, back in the here's the Wayback Machine. Back in the day of EverQuest, they did such a great job with the different races had different night visions. And if you were playing a barbarian or a human, you were screwed at night because literally your screen was pitch black except for the first 2 feet in front of you. Until that first time you kill a fire beetle and you harvest its eye and you now have a glowing light source on you and you can see 15 feet in front of you. Because, as long as you can see, you could avoid danger, which, that really beats home the idea in an adventuring party. If you're stuck in the dark, you're screwed, What if your characters only have torches and you go into a cave that's got water you have to swim under? Well, guess what? Your torches are now ruined, So you then have to come up with a different light source, which the GMs can always throw the players a bone and come up with something like, there's glowing lichen in this tunnel. Hopefully one of the players picks up on the idea of, hey, I've got a glass jar. I can fill my jar with glowing lichen and have a glowing light source on me. Or just to go back to the old EQ days, you find a fire beetle that's glowing there. Can I harvest its gland? I mean, even in the monster manual, it talks about the gland will last a couple days. It's just that a lot of folks don't think of doing survival or nature roll to think about, can I harvest parts? Because that's not really a thing that D&D does anymore. It's not like you're harvesting, it's not like the game Monster Hunter where you're harvesting every square inch of every monster you run into, if you're lucky.
Yeah, very good point. And that's why I always try to find some type of either, magical backup. That's why I always ask, hey, if there's more than one caster in the group when we're doing session 0, hey, do you have light? Do you have light? Okay. None of them take it or that type of thing. And I'm like, okay, well, what are the other races? When I find that out, then okay, I have to take, which with the last one, with the Daggers of Freeport, changelings can't see in the dark, even when they change shape. Yeah, Jim, you arranged that eventually. It took almost a year, but got a light source that I put into. It's a stone that glows. Just a little light, like the light of a candle. And I had it mounted into a necklace, just, wire and cording, easy peasy. But it's so I don't have to worry about, keep it in a pouch.
Because there's nothing worse than a group that's running down a dungeon with a bunch of torches and a single hobgoblin wizard comes out and casts wind gusts down the tunnel.
And
now all of a sudden you hear like a scene from Aliens, the goblins crawling out of their murder holes in the pitch black darkness.
Yeah, because I think I'm the only one in that group that does not have some type of dark vision or low light vision.
In that group, I think you're right. Because everybody.
Tiefling, half orc, half elf. What is the half elf? The tabaxi has the low light vision. So
and the tiefling.
Yeah, I'm the only one.
So you're the one that has to make sure to avoid the darkness. Stay out of that shade.
Yeah. And none of them took light. I'm sorry, I had to have prestidigitation and vicious mockery.
So that is definitely good reason to bring multiple light sources especially if you can do them on command,
Hmm.
because if it's like, hey, if it's something that glows, bright blue light in the presence of a rules lawyer, that becomes handy when all of a sudden, your torches are all doused and you have to have light for the group. I mean, and if you're a character that has a shield, and you're probably tanking if you have a shield, that is a really good light source for the team because it's facing danger. You
Yeah.
know,
I always like putting it on the front of the tank
you can
shield.
cast light on an arrow or a dagger or a coin and then throw it to a location. I'm always a huge fan of, light dagger and then throwing it into a bad guy. Then they become the light source.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good one.
As well as the whole make sure, like, glow rod was a classic D&D item that you can have. It's basically a crystal, you bang it against something and it glows like a glow stick, super translatable to most players in this day and age, that they can just, oh, it's a magic glow stick. That way you
Hmm.
can immediately have the whole, oh, this makes perfect sense of what this is if it's not a torch, because who wants to get their tinder kit out and actually have to light a torch?
Yeah.
Not to mention,
Although with prestidigitation, I can light a candle or small
and that's
fire.
another good one there, is you can make a small flame. And, after all, look at the old D&D style that when you made a campfire, it was equivalent of 5 torches that the group could then take out of the fire and use as light. So that
Hmm.
way you always have an option out there. Let's see, there's always, you could use alchemical fire. That's always a good one for making instant light. Just gonna say, the classic oil flask, there's a reason for that
Hmm.
oil flask, I'm just gonna say.
Yep.
And it's not just for the lamp. You could also rig, like use alchemical fire and say, hey, GM, can I rig a booby trap up so that breaks open if someone hits a tripwire?
Hmm.
That's one that I've done before. There's the use
Light can be used as a weapon
light
too.
can be used as an alarm clock. Look in the era back when they used to take the candle with the nails to keep track of
Hmm.
time when you're in underground.
Yep. Although remember, when we were the Scion dwarves in the Norse tradition,
Susceptible
would turn to
like
stone.
trolls.
And think of how many dwarves Carrie killed just by, shining a light on the, she like brought the
Yep, she
sun
used her
and
sun power.
the smackdown at one. Exactly. She used her sun power and she would just, she was creating statues right and
Yes, she
left.
was. So
Mm-hmm.
light is an important thing. Look at how many movies we've all seen where the dying of the light is the groups being screwed. I mean, Riddick, the
Mm-hmm.
first one, how many of the players were saved by the
I
light?
mean,
Pitch Black,
pitch
yep.
black.
Saved by
Mm-hmm.
the light because the monsters were actually vulnerable to it, which gives you that classic vampire thing, Light can be the best tool ever.
Yep. Scary things come out in the dark. The light, protects
Or
you.
worse, you could be playing a group of kobolds that are sensitive to the light, and then the light is your
Mm-hmm.
enemy.
Yeah, I played a kobold in, oh god, what was the name of that version
Midgard?
of, yeah, Midgard. I was a kobold rogue in that game, and I was taking minuses right and left when we were out in the light.
Mm-hmm.
But in dark, I was, everything was cool.
You're in your element. So
Mm-hmm.
just make sure you use the light for your players. Use the light as an option for your players, and make sure you use light against your players, because that's just how you should be doing things.
Yep.
Because blinding spells in the darkness is also fun too. I'm just saying.
And there's that spell darkness, which is the
There
opposite,
is.
where it.
There you go, hearkening back to the shade.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, as a GM, if you're carrying a light source, your players are depleting one of their hands for things that they can carry and do. Just gonna throw that out
See,
there.
that's why I always cast light on something, so that doesn't
Because you
happen.
can't have a sword and a shield and a torch too. What are you gonna sacrifice for the light? Alrighty, so
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna be a good place to wrap it up there for August the 9th, light.
Let there be
Or my
light.
favorite line, Aziz, light. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network, and feel free to enjoy our other shows such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion Hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.